Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube, and Happy New Year! It's the first stream of 2023. Looking forward to many more streams and videos to come over the rest of 2023. I hope it's a good year. Lots of things that I'm looking forward to, but I realized that in years prior I tended to kind of recap or go over what Apple has announced or did do throughout 2022, or at the end of the year we kind of look back a bit. And overall, I think 2022 was kind of a meh year for Apple. I don't know if I could say it was a good year. Not to say that all of it was bad. There was definitely a lot of good things in it. If I had to highlight best things of the year, probably the Apple TV update. It got cheaper. The remote got USB-C. The Mac Studio, that was definitely really cool. Not really what we thought Apple was going to do with the Mac lineup, but definitely something I'm grateful for. Something I wanted was Apple to do a more affordable but more powerful version of the Mac Pro. And they came up with its own name, and you can kind of spec it however you like it. So yeah, $1 Snake is saying it's a stopgap year. I think I kind of agree with that. The Mac Studio is meant to kind of hold over the pros as we wait for the real Mac Pro, which hopefully launches in 2023. At least that's the plan. And the iPhone 14, like the 14 and 14 Plus, I would say were pretty disappointing, even though my expectations were fairly low. Like, I knew that it was going to have the same chip, and I knew that the design was not going to be that much different, but I mean, even the colors weren't even that great. And all they could really come up with for exclusive feature-wise is emergency SOS satellite, which isn't even really going to be an exclusive feature for very long because there's already developments. By the way, I don't plan on doing a video on this because I think it's a little too niche. Sorry that the bit rate's low. T-Mobile seems to be freaking out this morning. Hopefully, usually it takes a few minutes and then it will slowly recover itself. I'll just close a few background apps just to be safe. But anyway, I think that Starlink version 2 satellites are being developed to fit on the Falcon 9 rocket, which means those version 2 satellites should be able to beam down the same wavelength of what 5G cell tower, maybe not 5G, but basically the wavelength that an everyday smartphone uses. I think over the course of 3 to 5 years, that won't be very much an exclusive feature, but it got car crash detection, it got action mode, which I'm pretty confident they could add to the 13 Pros if they wanted to, but they didn't. But they were kind of pricey as well. So the 14 Pros, though, I still agree and have to admit they're like the best phones you can buy. They're not perfect, but the dynamic island was, in my opinion, came way out of left field. That was not what we were anticipating in terms of software. It's not like the greatest thing the iPhone's ever had. It's not like a game-changing feature, but it was definitely something we weren't anticipating that it ended up getting. Will my home internet be able to use Starlink too? Could I? I could, but I don't need to. I'm using T-Mobile home internet, which for the most part usually is pretty stable, but today the bit rate is kind of low, so that's why I look very pixelated. But usually it just takes a couple minutes and then it recovers, and hopefully it saves itself. So sorry about that. Hey, thank you for the super chat, Ethan. He said happy 2023. Back at you, Ethan. Thank you very much. Yeah, Mike says can't wait for Gen 2 Starlink. I think the rollout of Gen 2 Starlink is probably going to be pretty slow if they are relying on miniaturized versions of those Starlink satellites, and they have to go on the Falcon 9 rocket because Starship isn't ready yet. But it's better than what we have right now, that's for sure. Hasael says, what was your product of the year? Apple Watch Ultra, Mac Studio, or AirPods Pro 2? I think mine would have been AirPods Pro 2. In my opinion, that was really the only, like, exceptionally great upgrade we got across the lineup. Like, the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max are great iPhones, and in my opinion, as long as you're comfortable with iOS, they're the best phones you can buy. And I was grateful that in the US at least, the price didn't go up. But, you know, switching everything to eSIM was kind of annoying and caused a lot of headaches for many people. And if you were coming from a 13 Pro, it really did not feel like that major of an upgrade. So they were good. I'm not saying the 14 Pro was a bad upgrade. I mean, anytime you can noticeably tell that the iPhone is newer from the front, and you don't have to look at the camera arrangement on the back to detect whether or not it's a new iPhone. I consider that a win because that doesn't happen every day. I think as exciting as the iPhone 15 may be, you probably won't be able to tell it's the iPhone 15 from the front. It's gonna have the same thickness bezels, it'll have a dynamic island. Once you get to the back, maybe you notice the curved edge design or bigger camera bump or something, but from the front, yeah, not much is gonna change. But in terms of like best upgrade across the board, like AirPods Pro 2 got better battery life, better noise cancellation, better transparency mode, and the price didn't go up. Plus, it got the Apple Watch charge method. It got the speaker pinging on the case and some unexpected upgrades, like you can now check the battery life of AirPods Pro 2, even if you haven't touched them for hours from your iPhone, because it has the U1 chip, which allows for that like real-time battery percentage sharing. So I would say the AirPods Pro 2 are the best. The Apple Watch Ultra is definitely a good contender because that seems to be a really popular model that a lot of people love. And it introduced the Apple Watch to a whole new design, a whole new category that it wasn't in before. So I would have to say that's up there. I still think that, you know, because it's kind of a new category that's kind of pricey and not for everybody, it doesn't get product of the year for me, but I think AirPods Pro 2, the fact that the price didn't go up and it got so many cool things. The Apple Watch Ultra, I feel like the main reason people want it is battery life. I don't think there's that many people that are buying the Ultra for deep sea diving or the dual GPS frequencies or even the action button. It's cool that it's titanium and stuff, but I guess I'm biased because I didn't find the design all that pretty. It's like brutalism at its finest. It's intentionally uglier. Like, I don't think the Apple Watch Ultra should have been designed differently. For the market it serves, the design makes perfect sense. But I'm not in that market it serves. So I guess I'm a little biased there. But AirPods Pro 2, very wide market, and I think they even said at the keynote that the AirPods Pro is their best seller, which I found interesting. Not the Gen 2 AirPods, not AirPods 3, but the Pros sell better than any other pair of AirPods, even though they're not the cheapest, which I thought was kind of cool. Let's see. You think I should get a Mac Mini now? Sure, there might be a new one coming out this year, but probably it will increase the price a lot. I don't know by a lot. My guess is that the M2 Mac Mini will be pretty lackluster. It'll just be the exact same design, but it happens to have an M2 chip in it. Maybe the price goes up $100. But the truth is, I also don't think that the M2 Mac Mini will have that big of a performance enhancement. Mark Gurman has been talking about for many months now, probably close to a year, the idea that Apple wants to put an M1 Pro or equivalent M2 Pro chip, like the entry-level MacBook Pro. Sorry, not entry. Oh, it's so confusing. I hate the 13-inch MacBook Pro so much. Basically, Gurman has been saying that they want to replace the Intel Mac Mini that's still being sold for some reason with the chip that they put in the base model 14-inch MacBook Pro. So that would be more of a performance enhancement if they end up doing it with an M1 Pro or M2 Pro chip in the Mac Mini. But that would make it probably a $1,100 to $1,200 Mac Mini, not a $600 Mac Mini. So yeah, if your budget is not much higher than what the base M1 Mac Mini offers, then I don't think there's much advantage to waiting, because there's nothing very concrete saying that we're going to get a new Mac Mini in March. We really don't have like a lot of evidence to support that. And if we do, it's likely not going to be, again, they could just slap an M2 chip in it, in which case it's not going to be that much faster. Or they could put an M1 Pro chip in it, but then it's going to cost a bit more. So yeah, I would say these days you can probably find an M1 Mac Mini for $500 or less if you go refurbished or Amazon Renew to that kind of thing. And that's going to be fine if you're comfortable with the base model Mac Mini. If that's even a considerable option for you, then that's going to be a great deal. And sure, you could wait, but I kind of feel bad because I was telling people all last year that there might be a Mac Mini around the corner, and it never happened. So that's the problem with the waiting game, is sometimes it's just endless. How do you feel about Apple making macOS more and more like iOS? I mean, in terms of UI, I got no problem with it. iOS is like the most successful operating system of all time. Like, iPhones are incredibly popular, and I don't think it's because of the hardware. to be honest. Like iPhones, I'm comfortable saying iPhones don't have the best cameras, and they don't have the best displays necessarily. I mean, they're very good displays. Some might say they have the best, I guess, especially with the 14 Pros and the brightness increasing and stuff. Some might argue they have the best displays, but um, I don't think that's the reason iPhones have sold really, really well. I think it's the software. I think that's ultimately what has kept iPhone inventory moving more so than any other singular Android brand is the OS. So just having more UI symmetry where the settings app on the iPhone looks like the settings app on the Mac. I don't mind that. I like my iPhone. I like iOS. In regards to like if you're saying like they should add a touchscreen or something, no, I do think that Mac OS from the get-go should be prioritizing keyboard and mouse input. And if you want a hybrid OS that can do keyboard and mouse and touch, work on iPadOS. iPadOS needs a lot of work. That's an understatement. iPadOS needs like a fundamental rewrite, in my opinion, where they just kind of restructure macOS to be touch-friendly. Basically do that to the iPad rather than occasionally bring over an old iOS feature once in a while. Oh, we added the weather app. Cool. You know, I feel like iPadOS could be the hybrid, but if you just want keyboard and mouse, that's what the Mac is for. If you just want touch, that's what the iPhone is for. We don't need two hybrid operating systems. That's redundant to me. Don't forget iPhones are a status symbol in some. Status symbol only gets you so far. You don't become like best-selling phone in a country because status symbol, in my opinion. Like you don't see Supreme outselling, you know, Hanes. You know, there's there's lots of people buy it because it works. There's some people that may buy it for a status symbol, but I don't think that's most people. I know a lot of people that bought the 14 Pro this year. None of them are the people that buy luxury clothes, luxury car. They just wanted a phone, and they don't like upgrading phones because it's complicated. They don't like having to move all their contacts, move all their pictures over. So when they do buy an iPhone, I was actually, on New Year's Eve, I went to a party, and I was talking to a friend of mine because he just got a 14 Pro. And I was like, oh, cool. How do you like it? I was asking him how he felt about it. Because at the same time, I was running these polls on YouTube and Twitter about why do people opt for the Pro? We were trying to figure out what most people were choosing it for. And I know it's not one thing. Everyone's like, I vote for all of the reasons. It's like, I know, but what's the primary reason? If you had to pick one thing about the Pro iPhone that you like over the regular, what makes you opt for the Pro? And that's what I was asking my friend. And he basically said that it was the camera for him. But the reason he went for the Pro, not so much really for the camera, it was more so he wanted to have a model that was future-proof. He was like, his last iPhone was the iPhone 8. So he was going from the 8 to the 14 Pro. It was a pretty massive upgrade. And he was like, I filled up the storage on the iPhone 8, and he flies drones for his work and stuff. And he was like, I literally had an app that I needed to control my drone, which takes videos and pictures for his job. And that app got offloaded because of how little storage he had. And, you know, other than the storage and the battery life getting worse, he was like, I just want to upgrade my phone right now and get the best thing that's available so that I know it'll last me easily 5-6 plus years, hopefully longer than that. I told him I think the 14 Pro, with how good the hardware is now, as long as I told him, like, be aware of battery replacements. Just because your battery may get worse in the future, that doesn't mean you need a whole new phone. You could probably replace the battery for $100 and be good for another 5 years, depending on how much you use it. But so he was just like, I want to keep a bunch of pictures because he's a new father. He just had his first daughter. And when you first have kids, it seems like the pictures and the videos that you take and that you preserve and that you share with family and friends, that's a really important thing to him. But he does love the display. It wasn't just one sole reason he upgraded for it, but he was like, I bought the 1 terabyte model, and I was shocked by that. I was like, really? You opted for 1 terabyte? And he was like, yeah, because I don't ever want to come anywhere close to having to worry about storage anymore. And he's a photographer professionally, but he wants to be able to take 48 megapixel like raw photos off of his phone because he loves the quality and the detail, and he knows that takes up a lot of space, and he takes a lot of pictures for work and stuff. So he was like, I think a lot of people opt for the Pro not because it's a status symbol. A lot of people get crappy cases that cover up the Apple logo anyway, but they buy it because they know this is going to last them a really, really long time. And I think the iPhone market has actually gotten so big that Apple can not give much love or attention to the regular iPhones, because as we know, the 14 Plus and even the regular iPhone 14 are not selling very well. Lots of people want the Pros, but not that many people are buying the regulars because I don't think iPhone upgrades are, for most consumers, I know the tech community is different, but for most consumers, it's not an annual thing. And it's not even a every other year type thing. And for some, it's not even every 3 years. It's like, I will buy an iPhone, I'll get the nicest one I can, and then just use it until I run it into the ground and it literally just doesn't work anymore. And people just have this impression, whether or not it's legit or not, that if I buy the best iPhone available, the Pro, then it will last me longer than the regular. And in some ways, they could be right. You know, the battery life is better. And especially this year, sorry, not this year, last year, I forget, it's 2023 now. Oh my God, it's a futuristic number. That the 14 Pros have better battery, and in 2022, that was the first time they gave the newer chip to the Pros. So if you care about getting the latest software support and, you know, having more RAM for that longevity, then yes, the 14 Pro definitely will probably get maybe a year or so extra software support than the regular 14s. We don't know for sure about that, but that's a reasonable assumption. It's not like completely out of the realm of possibility. I still think there's a chance that Apple might one day support both the 14 and 14 Pros, but then when they do their next, because Apple has cut off 2 generations of iPhone before at the same time. So if they cut off the A15 and A16 chip at the same time, there's a chance that it won't give you an extra year of support. But yeah, basically you got more of a future-proof model. And I think the iPhone market has gotten big enough that Apple can still collect a lot of sales and have a lot of revenue just from the small percentages, relatively small percentage of the market that's ready to upgrade, and for that to be their only upgrade for 3 to 4 years. Like, Apple doesn't need you to, I don't think Apple needs or even expects you to upgrade your iPhone every year, because obviously the changes aren't that major, and that's why why does Apple get rid of the Pro iPhones after 1 year? It's because they know that it's very, very similar to the new Pros, and they don't want to have the 13 Pro take away sales from the 14 Pro. So that's why they get rid of it. Let's see. Let's see. I was going to try and hold on to my 12 for 5 years. It will be 2 years next month. Wow. We're already coming up on 2 years since the iPhone 12. Time flies, right? Let's see. What are your thoughts on collabs such as Hermé Watch and the Hermé AirTag? Do you think they're still relevant? I don't know if they were ever relevant, to be honest. Eris4321 says, Happy New Year's, Drew. What are your wish lists for WatchOS 10? Still, the biggest one for me has got to be third-party watch faces. I feel like it's bizarre that they haven't done that yet, and I still feel very confidently that third-party watch faces are going to be more popular or more useful than apps. Like, I don't think that apps on the Apple Watch are that helpful. Like, there's some niche ones out there, like the scuba diving Apple Watch app that you have to pay monthly for, but like, I don't use that many third-party apps on my watch, and I'm fine with that. I still love my Apple Watch, but just the first-party apps that it has on it are what I use the most. I use the flashlight, I ping my iPhone, I text with it, I check email with it, the activity rings and stuff, notification management, all that you don't need third-party apps for on the watch, but they prioritize that for watchOS very, very early on. But third-party watch faces is something I could see lots of people using, depending on what companies come up with watch faces. And there can be an approval process. You know, I'm not saying Apple would lose out on too much control. It's like, no, just like how you can design an app for the Apple Watch, you should be able to design a watch face that you can install or even pay for. You could sell watch faces that get really creative and really unique and very original, and Apple can take a revenue cut off of those watch faces. And developers and stuff could come up with them. You could even have, like, YouTubers could come up with watch faces that tell you when the latest video goes up or what the latest video is, or, you know, tweet complications and that kind of thing. There's so much potential for third-party watch faces. I'm shocked Apple still hasn't got into it. Let's see. Not status symbol, it's more routine in a way. Yeah, I think people don't like changing platforms because it's a lot of work. People don't like changing phones unless they really need to. Alpha says, I have a feeling my next phone will need a terabyte because my iPhone camera will continue to increase. Yeah, I mean, I still think a terabyte is quite overkill for most people. Even pretty camera savvy people like my friend that I was talking to bought a terabyte because he was like, I don't even want to come close to filling it up. You know, he was like, I plan on owning this phone for 6+ years and storing a lot of things locally on it. So I don't think he'll run into a point where he actually ever fills 1 terabyte because he doesn't do that much like ProRes video, which is really, in my opinion, the only reason you would need a terabyte. But I'm one to talk because I bought the 8 terabyte MacBooks. And for that exact reason, I was like, I use my MacBook for work and I'm putting lots of videos on it every day. And I have to store a lot of B-roll that's accessible for the tech and EV channels. So it's definitely, I can understand and grasp the concept of get a bunch of extra storage so that you don't even have to think about it. Um, let's see. What do you think a Mac Pro that would be modular in a way that you could replace even the processor every year? Next year, Apple can sell you the new M3 Ultra in it. I don't think it's going to go that way. I'm not even sure if that's possible with ARM. Like, ARM processors have to be very, like, the whole concept is it's the whole system on a chip. So if you were replacing the processor, you'd probably be replacing at least the unified memory and the NANDs too, all at the same time. It'd be interesting if they found a way to do that, but I just, knowing Apple and how Apple considered the Mac Studio modular. That's just my reminder for everybody. Apple thought that the Mac Studio was modular simply because you can plug things into it. So I do agree that there will probably be a bit more modularity with the Mac Pro. I just don't think, similar to the cheese grater Mac Pro, Apple will ever just give all of the modular community exactly what they want. They always give them this like weird half-baked attempts at it. It's like, okay, we made a modular Mac Pro, but it starts at $6,000, and in order to upgrade it to the stuff you need, it's going to be a $15,000. And I thought the whole reason people liked modularity was because they didn't want to have to buy an all-in-one. You know, it was like, oh, buy an iMac Pro because it comes with these parts and these components and it comes with a 5K display and everything. And everyone was like, yeah, but I don't want to have to buy all of those individual components. I want to build out my own setup the way I want it. And Apple was like, okay, if you want to build out and build your own personal computer the way you want it, then it costs $15,000. It costs like way more than the iMac Pro does. So my guess is that things like the processor or even the unified memory won't be upgradable, but things like having PCIe slots and adding storage or adding non-unified memory RAM will probably be a thing, or maybe even external GPUs. They could find some hybrid way to integrate Apple GPUs that are built into the chip and external GPUs simultaneously. They could come up with something like that, but I don't think they would go as far as to let you replace the whole processor. I'd love to be wrong, though. It'd be cool if they figured out a way to do that. It's never really been possible to put a new CPU in an old logic board. Yeah, well, especially not with ARM. The MKBHD watch face pack. I mean, he's really pushing his merch and his membership, so I could imagine watch faces, especially as the Apple Watch is more of a fashion piece than any other Apple product. Let's see. Has your Apple Fitness journey begun for 2023? It's the best Apple service. No, I don't like the idea of Apple Fitness Plus, but I have been doing more push-ups. I did a much more rigorous, intense workout routine last summer, and you know, it was cool, and I was happy with how much I was able to do, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to stay on top of because my mind associated like, oh, well, if I work out, I have to do all these sets and I have to go through all these things with the weights and the jump rope and the running. And it became such like a mental barrier that a lot of the time, if I didn't have the time to designate to it, or it was cold, or if it was rainy, my house isn't that big, so I can't do all of my workouts inside the house. It just became like, it's a really good barrier for me to climb and get over, but because the barrier was so big, I fell off of it very easily. And if there was any excuse for me to fall back on of like, no, I can't get around to that, then I would fall on it. So I was like, okay, 2023, you know, I'm very happy with all the weight I lost in 2022. But for 2023, I need to pick more realistic goals, things that don't require me to get all this equipment out and make sure that the the weather's not too bad. And I don't like paying for memberships, of course, so I didn't want to go to a gym or anything. But I was just like, if I can just stick to doing a certain number of push-ups every day, that's something that doesn't take very much time. I can basically do it anywhere, and I can do it inside. I can do it on the go. It's not that big of a hurdle to jump over. So I'm trying to stay on top of the daily push-ups. Um, that way, it doesn't feel like a big barrier I have to jump over, kind of like my last workouts, which were a lot more rigorous and a lot more intense. But I found that they also made me a lot more tired, more easy, and basically I couldn't keep up with my dad. My my dad and I got into a pretty strict workout routine back when I was visiting him last summer, and he's a lot more disciplined and just a lot more on top of workouts than I am. I'm like, oh geez, how does he do this? It's amazing how good he is at it. Um, do I think there will be a new MacBook without any last name? I don't think so. I think marketing wise, it never really worked. Apple's tried multiple times. They had a regular MacBook that was plastic back in the early 2000s that I remember, and I liked it. I was a fan of it, but it just didn't work out, so they got rid of it. And then back in 2015, they tried again with the 12-inch regular MacBook, which I thought was very ironic and bizarre because it was it was lighter than the MacBook Air, but and thinner than the MacBook Air, but they didn't call it the MacBook Air. It was weird. So they got rid of that because that didn't sell well, and now we just have the Air and the Pro. But my guess is, marketing wise, they've just realized that having a regular MacBook doesn't really pay off. Like in the tech community, we should probably just allude to the idea that the 13-inch MacBook Pro is basically a regular MacBook. It's not. It's not. It shares so many differences between the 14-inch MacBook Pro. The chassis is different, the keyboard's different, the speakers are different, the chip is different, the display is different, the size is different, the ports are different. It'd be the weirdest thing. To me, it would be like calling the current iPad 10, which sucked, right? Like, what if we called that the 10.9-inch iPad Pro? That's essentially what they're doing with the 13-inch MacBook Pro. It's like, this is 12.9-inch iPad Pro with mini LED, 11-inch iPad Pro with LCD, and then the 10.9-inch iPad Pro with a non-laminated display and a slower USB-C port and different color option, different keyboard, different smart connect. So many changes. You'd be like, why the heck would you call that an iPad Pro? That's not it has nothing in common, barely has anything in common with the Pro iPads. That's how I feel about the 13-inch MacBook Pro. Is like, don't call that the Pro. It doesn't. From a lineup perspective, it makes no sense, but I think from a marketing perspective, it probably sells better simply because it has that Pro in the name. A lot of people who are not actually pros, that don't really need the performance of the 14-inch or the display or the ports or the speakers, but people that just walk into the Apple store and say, I need a MacBook, I want a Pro one because I'm going to use it for school, that makes me a Pro. And then they see the 14-inch, $2,000. Oh, that's way too much. Well, here you go. M2 MacBook Pro. This one starts at only $1,300. Oh, $1,300, that's way better. So it basically just makes the MacBook Pro name feel a lot more approachable. And for people that think they are pros that are not, there's a choice for them. And, a real techie pro that knows what they need out of their laptop would probably understand that the M2 chip is not going to perform that much better in the 13-inch MacBook Pro than it does in the M2 MacBook Air. And you'd probably want more ports or better, at least MagSafe. So there's, like, the real pros aren't buying that one, in my opinion. Or if you really just love the touch bar, you can get an M1 MacBook Pro for a lot cheaper. And it's not going to perform all that different from the M2 MacBook Pro. So I think it's just made to look good. But that kind of recaps 2022 for me. It was like the year of the Decoy models. Everything was like making devices that are intentionally not that great, but they help the sales of other products. Like the 14 Plus, what felt like a Decoy. The MacBook Air in a lot of ways felt like a decoy because of the price hike. It got you so close to the price of a 14-inch MacBook Pro. but yeah, the iPad 10, in my opinion, is kind of a decoy. It's kind of meant to encourage sales of the iPad Air. That's what makes a lot of sense in my head. Is like they raised the price a lot. They raised it like $120 on a $330 iPad, which is what, close to like a 30-40% price hike. Like that's huge. And they still give it Apple Pencil 1. And like I'm sure the thought process was likely, if we're at an Apple store, people are wondering what iPad should I buy. If they show the iPad 10 and the iPad Air right next to each other, and they're like, oh, so to connect this pencil, you got to use this adapter and dock it with this cable and then plug that cable into the iPad. Whereas if you go out on the iPad Air, you just drop the Apple Pencil 2 on the iPad Air. And that little demo comparison has probably sold so many people on the iPad Air. There have probably been so many people that are like, wow, that's way better. That's way cooler. And then Apple can say, see, the iPad Air gets Stage Manager. You can do these multitasking apps. I don't know if that's actually paid off because iPad sales have been going down a lot. But my guess is that was Apple's thought process. That their guess was the iPad 10 will make the iPad Air look great. You know, whether or not it worked, yet to be seen. I'm guessing it didn't work because iPad sales haven't been great. But James says my workout is jumping through hoops dealing with other people. Yeah. There's a lot of that going on. My version of a workout, walking figure eights around the basement. Yeah, I did that back in my attic days. Back when I was trying to close my rings every day and it was the end of the day. That was nowhere close. Let's see. Do you think Apple will ever release a touchscreen MacBook? It's really irritating that you have to bring iPad and MacBook together to do any shot of... I don't think that bringing touchscreen to the MacBook makes sense, so I'm sorry that Device Electronic, your question wasn't answered earlier. It's because I kind of already addressed it. My point is, we don't need two hybrid operating systems. We already have an operating system that's designed for touch and keyboard and mouse, and it's severely limiting. The problem is, it doesn't have macOS features. So I would say it's much, much easier to bring macOS to the iPad than it is to bring a touchscreen to the MacBook. That's going to complicate hardware. That's going to make the display lids more thick. That's going to make the lid wobble back and forth. Like, just lightly tap the edge of your MacBook, the edge, like not the screen, but the bezel. Just lightly tap it a little bit on your 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros and notice how much it wobbles. Those display lids are not designed to be touched. It's not just, oh, you just add in one extra layer and now it's a multi-touch display. No, now people are going to want to take the display off. They're going to want to fold it all the way around and make it 360 degree. That'll drive the price up because the complexity of the display goes up. So you're going to make MacBook Pros more expensive. You're going to make the MacBook turn into another basic 2-in-1 like most Windows laptops already are. So in my opinion, to address your complaint that you don't want to have a MacBook and iPad for Photoshop or whatever, the solution is to make the iPad have better software. That's what it needs. iPad has great hardware that could run desktop class software easily, and we have proof of that. The proof is in the pudding with the MacBooks. But I don't think you need to turn MacBooks into something they're not. I'm actually a really big fan of MacBooks not having touchscreens. And I think Apple's been pretty clear on that. Like even Steve Jobs, who's been gone for over 10 years, said they tried that and they didn't like the results. And I know you could say, well, Steve isn't there anymore, things have changed. But even Craig, just a couple of years ago, when asked about merging macOS and iPadOS together, they said no. So if you're not planning on merging the two, I'm not sure why you would bring touch to Mac. I would be against it personally. I think it would just raise the prices and not really unlock that many more use cases. I have thought about setting up a NAS. I don't want to do it. It's too pricey. I have limited outlets in here, and I don't like big towers. I like having things local, and especially when I go on trips. We're planning several trips for 2023 because I love working, and this is barely a job to me. I don't know how this is work, but I love streaming, and I like making videos, and we still want to travel the world, and I feel like I'm very blessed, thanks to your guys' generosity, that I can work basically wherever there's an internet connection, but that's with the contingency that I have a mobile workstation. And I need to be able to access B-roll regularly, lots of different varying B-roll depending on what I'm making videos on, right off of the computer that I have with me, and I can't take a NAS with me I could try to access it remotely, but that's going to substantially slow down how quickly I can get the footage. And usually when I'm on trips and in different places, I'm trying to make videos as quickly as possible so that I can go out and actually enjoy the surrounding environment. So it's worked out very, very nice for me to have a laptop with a ton of local storage and a ton of performance and great battery life. There's literally no other laptop that I could find that could do what my MacBook Pro is doing for me. So even if I wasn't an Apple sheep and not in the, even if I loved Android and I love the Pixel and I love the Samsung tablets or something, I would still probably have to buy a MacBook Pro to do the work that I'm doing right now. Let's see. Walmart put the iPad Air 4 on sale for $349 right after the iPad 10 came out. That was a far better. Oh yeah, $349. That's basically $20 more than the iPad 9. And you get a laminated display, and you get Apple Pencil 2, and you get the no home button and Type-C, the faster USB-C port than the iPad 10. Yeah, there's just so many reasons to not buy the iPad 10. There's so many reasons. Katrina says iPad sales are probably down a lot because there's no reason to upgrade from anything newer than the Air 2. Oh yeah, no, I agree. We got into a big discussion with someone, I can't remember who they were, in the Discord about that, but they were saying, they were trying to make the claim that iPad sales were artificially inflated because of false promises by the media. And I was like, no, it's not from the media. The media's been pretty critical of iPads. Like, all the YouTube videos reviewing iPad Pros from the last 3 years have all, 4 years practically, have all said the same thing. Like, you go watch MKBHD's video or John Morrison's video about the 2018 iPad Pro, back when that came out, and compare that to what they say about the M2 iPad Pro. It's all the same exact argument for the past 4 years, which is hardware's great, software's not. Hardware's fantastic, but the software hasn't kept up. And the general news media, CNET or NBC or whatever, they're not saying anything any different. People just expect if you're charging that much for a device with that much performance in it, that it should have software capabilities. And I agree. To me, it is not an issue of false promises. It is an issue of Apple not delivering on improvements. They just kind of refine and, especially with IPadOS, barely put any thought or energy into it. Like, the fact that there's still no optimized battery charging drives me nuts. AR to VR glasses, from 1 to 10, what do you think is the chance of it this year? I mean, I'm tempted to say 0, but there's always a chance. You should never say never, I guess. But I guess I'm going to say 1. We've been hearing that Apple glasses or Apple VR mixed reality headset thing is going to come out next year for the past 4 years now, and it still hasn't happened. And all the latest reports have said it's delayed till the end of 2023. So I don't know why there's still a bunch of people thinking it's coming in early 2023. It's like you're basing your expectation off of an outdated report that those same sources have now said it's not coming early 2023. And as we get closer to the end of 2023, they'll probably change their report again to say, actually, it's not coming till 2024. So, yeah, I doubt it, but I've been wrong. The Tech Nerd agrees. He says the M1 Pro and Max laptops are the best for creators. I know a lot of YouTube channels that run off of the same laptops, and they're not all like Apple channels. They're just like making regular video content, and they're like, yep, sorry, I want something that I can take with me because that just opens up all kinds of potential. And, in the old days, like even just 5-6 years ago, you could get a lot of great performance on a desktop and you'd had substantially less performance on a laptop. And that's been my favorite thing about Apple transitioning to ARM, is they kind of eliminated the benefits of going with a desktop over a laptop. It's because you can easily turn a laptop into a desktop. It's got external monitor support. You can close the display lid, leave it plugged in, and have an external monitor that looks great, and you can work off of that. But then on the off chance, even if it's not a common use case, sometimes my MacBook stays here on my desk for weeks at a time, but for that occasional trip where sometimes I'm gone for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or longer, being able to take all that with me and I'm still getting desktop class performance. My MacBook Pro outperforms my iMac Pro. That has been such an amazing advantage, and the battery life improvements, I think, has convinced a lot of people that used to think, oh no, I need to edit my videos on a desktop, to now go, probably not, actually. The number of people that need the M1 Ultra is incredibly low compared to in the old days. The performance you could get on a desktop was substantially better than you can get on a laptop. And now I just don't feel like that's the same case anymore. Now it's like, I mean, kind of a little bit better, but not like use case opening better. Roy G, thank you for the super chat. Will prices be as bad this year in the US? Big fan. Thank you so much for the donation. What, prices for Tailosive Tech Plus or prices for Apple products? Yes, they'll be bad. Tailosive Tech Plus is a horrible deal. No one should subscribe to it, just so we're clear. I think inflation is slowed down a bit in near the tail end of 2022. So I'm hoping that we see. I mean, it's not really deflation per se, but not as quickly. I think that we are technically, well, it depends on your definition, I guess, but we are kind of gonna head into a recession. It seems like. Where there's just in general less people willing to upgrade or spend money on expensive things, and that would probably convince Apple to not increase prices all that much. But it's a good question. I never think it's a bad idea to go into a launch expecting the prices to be worse. Like, we all went into the iPhone 14 launch expecting the Pros were going to be at least $100 more expensive. I think on the podcast, I was predicting that the 14 Pro Max might go up $150 because I was like, they can charge whatever they want for this thing. And there's a bunch of people that are going to buy it. I don't think that a difference of 100 or 150 bucks is going to convince someone to buy one iPhone over another, as proof by the 14 Plus. No one's buying that, even though it's cheaper than the 14 Pro. Everyone would rather have the 14 Pro, and it's not that big a price gap. Once you cross the $200 price gap, I feel like there's a bit more separation between markets, which is why the reports that Apple is considering lowering prices on the entry-level iPhones is not a bad idea, in my opinion, because I was like, there was a lot of allegedly, there's more sales for the mini iPhone than there was the 14 Plus. And I think it's because the mini iPhone was catering and targeting a completely different market from the Pros. The 13 mini was not really stealing people away from the Pro iPhones because there was such a big price gap between 13 Pro, and of course, the 13 mini was an even wider price gap. Whereas now that the price gap is so narrow between Plus and Pro, that most people are just going to go for the Pro at that point, because I agree, the Plus is not that great a deal. It's not necessarily a bad phone, it's just poorly priced. Having a 60 hertz display, I don't like, but I guess most people don't really notice or care about that kind of thing. So I do think going into the year expecting price hikes is not a bad thing. It's probably safer to assume. Sure, let's say that when the iPhone goes Ultra with the iPhone 15, that comes with a price hike because it's going to have better cameras, better design, or if they switch to titanium in the chassis, that drives up the price or whatever. Hopefully I'm wrong, but sure, let's just say prices will go up. That's not a bad assumption. Chris Norton says, what are we talking about? We're basically, we started the stream off talking about Apple in 2022, how they did as a year. And I think I agreed with $1 Snake basically saying it's a stopgap year. Nothing really, other than AirPods Pro 2 and the Apple Watch Ultra, really was amazing. Everything felt kind of lackluster and kind of left us wanting more. So I don't think it was a great year for Apple, but that's okay. Like, they don't need to have a great year every year, to be honest. 90 hertz is a nice in-between, in my opinion. I don't think it's really worth messing with because either people notice higher refresh rate and they don't, or they don't. And the people that are fine with 60 are going to continue to be fine with 60. And if you mess around with upping the display panels with LTPO and you have a whole line just for 90 hertz, but then you still have a whole line just for 60 hertz, and then you have a whole separate line for 120 hertz, to me that just kind of complicates things unnecessarily. Like, the people who would notice 90 hertz are the people that are going to pay extra for 120. As we're seeing, the 14 Pros are already selling incredibly well. That's what most people are opting for, and they have 120. So if you don't care about 120, I don't think you're going to care about getting 90. I get that it's the halfway point, so it looks good in the lineup, but I don't think that actually translates well to the consumer. Let's see. It makes no sense to buy the 14 when the 13 Pro costs the same. That too, but Apple's not selling the 13 Pro. So I agree. I think it's a good idea to keep your eyes open to certified refurbished or Amazon renewed or eBay refurbished. Look at the secondhand market because you'll save a lot of money that way and get basically the exact same experience as if you buy new, depending on how good the condition is. But particularly with refurbished on eBay, that comes with a full warranty, a 1-year warranty. And free 30-day returns. Even if you get something and you don't like it, you can send it back. But there's a lot of money to be saved there, and I encourage that, and I'm trying to normalize that with my videos and just tell people, no, buy this secondhand. Even if Apple doesn't sell it, that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy it. But there are definitely still going to be a very large group of people that insist on walking into the Apple store or walking into their Verizon or AT&T and just buying whatever's there. And they won't look at secondhand because that just scares them too much, I guess. Because I don't know who it came from. I might get scammed. If I get scammed, they think that if they buy something that's not from first-party suppliers, then they're going to get screwed. But yeah, that's why I don't think you can completely fall back on, well, if you're going to keep comparing it to secondhand models, Apple's always going to lose because, first party, it's being manufactured from the ground up. It doesn't have any price resale value degradation because it's a brand new model. But I don't know. I think there might be a decent amount of truth to just going back to the 3 iPhone lineup. Apple seemed to have not been very happy with the mini iPhones. And they don't see, it seems to have gone even worse with the Plus iPhone coming back. The sales are super low and the production is crap. They basically, it sounds like they just turned off the production lines for the 14 Plus because there was very little people ordering it and they were building way more than were selling. So to me, a good compromise would be to come up with bring back basically the iPhone XR or iPhone 11 price equivalent, right? That was a lot cheaper than the Pros. They were selling the 11. I think that was one of their best sellers ever because they reduced the price on the iPhone 11. That was the big shock. A lot of people didn't see that coming. But it was, if I remember correctly, $699, $700 for the iPhone 11. That was a $300 price gap between the 11 and the 11 Pro. And I believe the 11 Pro still sold pretty well, but the iPhone 11, of course, outsold both because it was just such a great buy. I don't know if maybe you gotta. It's a weird pricing structure to think about, trying to figure out how to. You want all of your iPhones to sell reasonably well because it takes a lot of time and money to ramp up an assembly line and be building tens of millions of something. So if it sells super low like the 14 Plus does, then it's okay, all of the time and energy we put into the assembly line is seeing no payoff. So it's not even worth selling. But at the same time, does having the 14 Plus around convince more people go with the Pro? Would less people opt for the Pro if the 14 Plus wasn't there? I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell what the margins would be like or what the sales would be like. I don't think Apple minds that the most expensive iPhone is the best seller. I don't think they're complaining about that. But in my opinion, a good compromise would be to either drop the price and the size, because I get that it's easy, right? It's always easy to say, we'll just make it cheaper. But I'm okay, if you're gonna take away from the starting price, you have to take away from the hardware. It's very easy for someone to just say, well, if Apple wants the 14 Plus to sell, just drop $100 off the price. It's okay, make it $500. I'm sure it'll sell much better if it was a $400 iPhone. But I was trying to look at ways in my last video about that, okay, if we're reducing the price, how can we, what would you take out of the hardware to make it cheaper? And my solution was to make it smaller. So rather than a 6.1 inch and 6.7 inch iPhone, do a 5.8 inches because people love the 5.8 inch iPhone. And Apple doesn't seem to want to keep doing the mini, so maybe do something in the middle. Make it a bigger than a mini but smaller than a 14. And that way you can still start it at that sweet spot, $699, and maybe you don't need a Plus. Maybe the three iPhone lineup is the way it ought to be. You get 2 sizes for the Pros and 1 size for the regular. call it good there. And if you can only have one size for the regular, then 5.8 inches is the best, like, middle ground. Like, a lot of people like that 5.8 inch size. Um, and with better battery life than the iPhone 11 and 12 and 13 had to offer, but, you know, compact. Why won't the next standard be 90 hertz and 144 hertz? Because law of diminishing returns. At a certain point, you can't tell the difference. The number of people that can see the difference between 120 and 144 is very, very small. And the number of people that can tell the difference between 60 and 90 probably even smaller. Let's see. iPhone 11 was great. I agree. With the night mode and everything, and it got ultra wide. It was like an upgrade over the 10R that was cheaper. That's very rare. The certified refurbished idea is trickling to the EV channel. I don't think they call it certified refurbished on the EV market. We just call that used. But Alpha, thank you for supporting with Tailosive Tech Pro. He says, in a world of disappointment, I expect disappointment. Expectations are the thief of joy, except when they are exceeded. Yeah. I think that's how you just maintain happiness in life, is by having realistic expectations. That's kind of my thought process with New Year's resolutions. You know, I think a lot of people, they start the new year with like, I'm going to work out, I'm going to lose this much weight. And they stack up all these things on a list of, I want to achieve all of these great things. And they expect too much from themselves. Their expectations are really high. And then you of course, because they were too high and too unrealistic, you can't achieve them. And then that just makes you depressed and sad. Oh no, I couldn't live up to my resolutions. I couldn't do what I wanted. So that's why for my New Year's resolution, I was just like, I want to at least do 30 push-ups a day. I could do more if I make time for it. Like yesterday, I did 90. But at the bare minimum, every day, doesn't matter if it's raining outside or sunny, doesn't matter if it's hot or cold, doesn't matter if it's the weekend or a weekday. No matter what, I just want to do it at minimum 30 push-ups a day. Pretty easy to do. You know, when I was doing my more intense workout training, I was doing, like, on certain days, I would do, what are those things called? The things where you, why am I blanking on the name on it now? See, this is how long it's been, so I've worked out. Drew hasn't worked out his brain. Burpees, that's what it is. I was doing hundreds of burpees a week and hundreds of push-ups a week, and, you know, it was intense, and I'm sure it was better for my health, but the barrier of accomplishing that goal was much harder, much higher, and made it a lot more of a commitment of time. And I was like, no, I think if you expect too much, then burpees. Thank you, Emmanuel. If you expect too much from yourself, you'll disappoint yourself. So I'm putting the bar pretty low so that it's achievable, and then you can work your way up from that. That's kind of my mindset from it. Would love a smaller Pro iPhone for a secondary. I think 6.1 inches is as small as they can get the Pro iPhones with that camera. That camera is not shrinking. I'm sorry. They're not getting rid of the bump, and the bump is getting taller and wider, and it doesn't sound like that trajectory is changing. Best case scenario, they could drop the telephoto lens and just get rid of the 3x option on the smaller Pro, and if you want 2x, you just gotta zoom on the 48 megapixel sensor. I think you could probably have a very pro camera system just with two 48 megapixel cameras. One's ultra wide, one's regular, and you 2x on the regular to zoom. And okay, it's not got a periscope lens, but that's the only way I could visualize the camera bump actually getting smaller. And I haven't seen any rumors of them doing that. What did Sam K says? I did that for 2020 lockdowns, 50 push-ups per day, but learned pretty quickly to balance the push-ups with squats. Yeah, squats are good too. I'm just like, I've noticed that I was comparing like how I looked a year ago to how I look now, and I was happy with the progress, but I realized like my legs have never really changed. Even when I was overweight at my worst, when I was like over 240 pounds, my legs basically look like they do now. And maybe it's because I grew up mountain bike riding. And I feel like I can walk forever. Like I go on hikes or go on walks with my wife and stuff. And I never get tired of walking. I can just walk forever, basically. like that guy at the end of X-Men Origins, Wolverine, where they're like, walk until your feet bleed and then keep walking. That would be me. I'm never tired. I can walk like 10 miles and still feel fine. So I've built up my legs really well, but I was like, I would like to, I've never felt like I've done enough like arm workouts, and push-ups are just very simple, very easy mentally to me. Like, I just need to do them and just stay on top of them. And I was like, okay, I feel confident with my legs, but I feel less confident with my arms. But yeah, squats would be good too, and core workouts. But push-ups kind of work on your core a little bit. Thank you, Burkhart, for supporting for 10 months. He says, I hope Apple adds the 48 megapixel sensor to the regular 15 this year. Being able to advertise 2x optical zoom on the non-Pro would be a cool upgrade for many. That would be great. I'm with you. That would be an awesome upgrade. I just don't think they'll do it because there's not much incentive to increase the cost of manufacturing that model. I think there's more incentive to reduce the price. And the big headlining feature of the iPhone 15 regular is probably going to be the dynamic island, because you can see that it's an easy marketable feature. You couldn't do this on the 14, so it's not as easy right now, right? Like right now, anybody that's like, I'm thinking about buying the regular iPhone 14, I go, oh my God, stop, just buy the 13. It's the same chip, it's the same display, same notch, basically same camera. Very few differences between the two, and you can easily save yourself $100. And then I tell them, try out the 13 mini, because then you'll save $200, and it's a great phone. So that's very easy to tell someone, stop, don't do it. But with the iPhone 15, that's going to have dynamic island. And that's a very noticeable design change from the front that you can just say, yep, that's on the 15. It's not on the 14. It's a feature that gives you your ringer switch changing, the battery, the Face ID, all the third-party support with Dynamic Island that people like. It's a pretty obvious, like literally in-your-face feature that the 15 has that the 14 doesn't. So it's going to be harder, in my opinion, to convince people to not get the 15. The 48 megapixel camera is great, but it's quite large for one, so I don't think they could keep the camera bump the same size. What I think is actually more likely, that I was surprised didn't happen with the iPhone 14 series, to be honest, is they could give the same ultra wide lens that the 13 Pro and 14 Pro has. Thank you for the super chat. I'll get to that. Give the same ultra wide sensor and lens as the regular iPhone 15 plus USB-C. That's true. I forgot. Yes. That's a huge, thank you, Xander G, for bringing that up. That's a huge difference. Again, we don't know for sure if that's happening, but if the new iPhone 15, even the cheap one, has dynamic island and USB-C, that's going to make, well, you can save $100 by getting a 14 or save $200 by getting a 13. That's a pretty hard sell, because a lot of people are going to want Type-C and the dynamic island. But I was surprised they didn't bring macro mode to the regular iPhone 14, because I thought that was a really cool, great feature on the 13 Pros. And I was like, oh, this is a perfect thing for the Pros to have this year and the regulars to have next year, but they still didn't do it. So it would be great if they brought macro mode to the regular iPhone 15 so that you can get super close up and get those high quality ultra wide shots. And get the 48 megapixel sensor, but I feel like this is sounding too good to be true. Too many great upgrades all at once. Something can't go right. So thank you, Bradley Smith, as well, for joining Tailosive Tech Plus. I appreciate that. I'll see you in the members stream. Roy G super chatted again. He says, I'm a big Mexican fan. Here the regular 14 Pro starts at $1,330. Would you be okay paying that much more this year? Price here feels unfair. No, but to be fair, I didn't feel it was worth paying for the 14 Pro in the US, which we didn't get price hikes. I didn't think the dynamic island was worth it. It's kind of cool. It's kind of nifty. Macro isn't on the regular 14 because it's using the same ultra wide from the 11. Yeah, it's been reusing a lot of things. I just think the 48 megapixel camera sounds like a very pro thing to boast about. It would be cool to bring back the 2X, I agree, but I don't think the everyday buyers care about 2X, because 2X is an enhancement. It's not a new angle. Like 2X is, you're just telling people that photos don't look as pixelated when you zoom in. Whereas ultra wide is like a whole new perspective. That's not something you could get before with the single lens setup. Um, but no, I don't. So to answer Royji's question, I don't think that the price is reasonable. But that's just me. I guess it depends on your income, right? If you make 50,000 a year, maybe that's unrealistic to spend that much on a phone. But if you make $1 million a year, then sure, why not? But I think most non-tech people will only remember the dynamic island from the 14 series, so most people won't care when the regular 15 gets it because they'll go, didn't the 14 already have that? Well, in the tech community, yes, I agree. The tech community won't care because we'll be like, we already know what that is. But my point is, it will be a harder comparison when we're doing the back-to-back. You know, every time new iPhones come out, we always do the iPhone 15 versus iPhone 14. Is it worth it? And those comparisons is what I'm saying. It won't be as easy to say don't buy the regular 15 because the 14 is basically the same thing for everyday people. Techies will not even think about it. Yeah, you're right. Do you fear Apple will start creating dumb services in the coming years, like make weather and maps less convenient, make features that are normal today available through a paywall? I do fear that. I don't feel extremely confident. I feel like Apple has to be aware of how frustrating and annoying that could get very quickly. So my hope is that they find a way to monetize. Well, I mean, I don't need them to monetize those things, but I know they want to. Like I did a video on, they want to figure out how to put more advertising revenue through maps, which is like when you're searching through a restaurant or something through Apple Maps, that restaurants could pay to have their result listed higher than other restaurants or something. That wouldn't bother me as much as just like straight up pop-ups, or like Apple Maps isn't going to work unless you pay, I don't know, $5 a month or something for Apple Maps Plus, and then it gives you more real-time traffic data or something. I don't want that. Although I guess I don't use Apple Maps anymore, so I wouldn't really care. I did see that Dark Sky is officially dead. Apple Weather is good, and there are many alternatives on Android. I get why people are upset. I thought that was really messed up what Apple did. They bought out a company and then just killed it. And a lot of people don't like the default weather app. And I know people in my personal life that prefer Dark Sky for being more analytical and going into more detail than the regular weather app did. And there's a lot of people that use that service on Android that just are left with nothing now. The fact that they have to go find some alternative is annoying. It's like, that's just kind of shady stuff. I don't like it when Apple does stuff like that. Let's see. Do I think the iPhone 15 will have the same chip as the 15 Pro? No. I'm pretty sure Quo is right that here on out they're going to continue restricting the Pro chips to the latest chip to the Pros, and then they'll put in last year's chip. So I think that regular iPhone 15 will get the A16 chip. And then the iPhone 15 Pro or iPhone 15 Ultra will probably get the A17 chip, because there was a report not too long ago talking about how the A16 costs like twice the price for Apple because of TSMC and how expensive it is to get the latest silicon available at scale. Basically, the A16 chip cost Apple twice the price as the A15 chip. So I understand why they want to restrict it to the higher priced iPhones. And it makes sense when Apple Silicon has gotten as fast as it is now. The number of use cases or the number of performance gains that open up by having the latest chip is pretty low, in my opinion. And also, another thing worth mentioning is the most accessible or like relatable chip upgrades. Like, it's one thing to just say, okay, the chip is faster, great, it performs better in Geekbench. But most of the real world applications of having better neural engine and having a faster CPU or better GPU primarily affect the camera. And the Pro iPhones tend to have way better camera hardware. So it's like having a 48 megapixel sensor or having 3 lenses that you're switching between or recording at ProRes. All of those things you need a faster chip for, or a faster chip can directly benefit the camera system. Whereas the regular iPhones, like the 14 and 14 Plus, they're not doing the raw photography. They're not doing the ProRes recording. They're not taking 48 megapixel sensors. So even if you got the A16 chip in there, I don't think it would really do much for it. So it makes perfect sense to me. I know a lot of people were against it because they just love the idea of newer iPhone getting the fastest chip possible. Whereas I think restricting that to more of a pro feature makes perfect sense, considering how much it costs to build those. Um, the iPod Touch did get discontinued in 2022. I'm grateful for that. it was long past its time. That needed to go away. The big heads up with the dynamic island is that it makes the whole camera notch smaller. If they don't bring the island, then the notch will be smaller at least. It makes the whole camera notch. I don't know what you mean by that. I mean it's smaller, but it's deeper. It cuts further into content than the notch does. So my opinion on it on the island is that it's better when it's doing something, but it's worse if it's just sitting there. If you're watching a video in landscape, I found dynamic island more annoying than the notch, personally. Um, but if you were playing music and the now playing thing is up there, or if you're activating Face ID and it's just a drop down instead of a pop up, or if you're switching your ringer switch or whatever, airdrop progress, if it's in the middle, if it's being dynamic and it's actually showing you things, dynamic island is great, and I prefer that to the notch. But that was part of the reason I got bored with the 14 Pro so quickly, was because for how I use my phone, there are not a lot of times where the dynamic island was doing anything. So apart from that, it was just a pill that's cutting in deeper on content. It's further down on the screen than the notch is, and it just feels like a hole in your user interface, rather than part of the border. The notch feels like part of the bezel, but the island feels like it's cutting it. Same thing with Trent was bringing up, because I went on the Man About Tech's Viper. What's his name? I can't keep track. I was on his channel last week, and his friend Trent mentioned that the dynamic island shows up in screen recordings, which is really weird and annoying because the notch never did. But now that it's part of the UI, they feel like they have to include it. But now in your screen recordings, when you're showing a tutorial or something, there's just this big black stretch across the top with a red dot. It's just weird. Thank you so much, Chris. He says, hope you had a great New Year. I did. It was a lot of fun. I actually wasn't planning on it, but because where I live, it's in kind of a rural community, people firing off fireworks and guns like crazy. It's like 11:20. It's not anywhere close to midnight, and everyone goes. It's super loud, and I couldn't get to sleep until after midnight, so I was awake. But thank you. It was fun. We spent a lot of the evening in a hot tub with some friends and swapping stories and watching the fireworks go and watching the ball drop on TV and stuff. It was great. Thank you so much, Chris. And he says, anybody brought up how bad the iPad 10 was? Yes, absolutely, we did. Apple Maps doesn't get enough love from Apple. The satellite image of my house is at least 5 years old. Roads are missing. Intersection design changes. Well, the satellite's not Apple's fault. Apple doesn't own their own satellites. They're just pulling existing satellite images down. But I think Apple Maps has prioritized the big cities, which kind of makes sense. That's where the most people are. But the redesigned Apple Maps UI when you enter a major city is really cool. Like, there's a lot of detail, and you can drive under overpasses, and like whenever we went across the Golden Gate Bridge, it was all in detail, and it had all this 3D data, and it was all the color accurate and stuff. OMG, wow, guns. That's not safe. Well, around here, everybody has guns. So we won't go down that train, but they're a pretty common thing around here, and thankfully no one was hurt. Is shooting guns on New Year's Eve a thing in the USA? Oh, yeah, as long as I've been alive, that's been a thing. Very common. I can't remember a time that I didn't hear gunshots on New Year's Eve. But surprisingly, no one's gotten hurt from that, at least where I live. I've never heard of someone saying. There's been more injuries from fireworks than there have been guns. Firecrackers. What's funny is that, at least where I live, they set off a ton of fireworks on the 4th of July, which is in the middle of summer. Everything's really hot and dry, and everything catches fire, and usually the fire department has to go to a million places the day after 4th of July because everyone sets off illegal fireworks. But New Year's, we don't sell fireworks, and there's not huge fireworks shows. There's just people with illegal fireworks that they imported from other states or kept from 4th of July, even though this would make far more sense in terms of the time of year. It's colder, it's been raining, it's more wet. Like, if you were going to set off fireworks like crazy, you should do it on New Year's, not 4th of July, but we have it so backwards, it's weird. Um, let's see. Simply Source says, I don't know if it was talked about, but Mac Studio Best of 2022. That I would put up there as, like, probably my favorite Mac of the year. Yeah. I didn't care as much for the M2 MacBook Air, and we didn't get really that many Macs in total, but we weren't used to Apple making a desktop tower that lets you set up your own display and your own accessories the way you want it, but it also has a lot of performance. It's not just the Mac Mini. So yes, I would say best Mac of the year, not product. Although it's a very good product. Um, M1 Ultra was kind of lackluster. We thought that would be a lot faster than it was. Um, if you didn't make tech videos, would you rather be a tech modder, leaker, or teardown, or render designer? I'd rather be a tech. Is that not tech videos? I don't love modding things or tearing down things, and I've dabbled in the leak community, and I didn't really enjoy that. It kind of made watching Apple events and Apple announcements less fun, because rather than just getting excited for what was to come, what hardware was going to get announced and what the prices were, it just turns into who's right and who's wrong and who gets to flex about how right or wrong they are. And I was like, I don't like turning tech announcements into like these ego things. So I would rather not know or not have any leakers. So I guess if I had to pick one, I would say render designer, because that's the closest to what I have now. I like to speculate. That's the most fun for me, for both tech and the EV community, is speculating on what's to come. Like, what's going to make the most amount of sense, what's going to be profitable for the company, what's going to cannibalize the best-selling product of today. And render designer basically is just another form of speculation. Which I've done a little bit of in the past with fans and people that are more talented at 3D modeling than I am. And I pitch to them, this is what I want the iMac or the iPad or whatever to look like. And then they come up with their design. And then I do videos on, this is how I would design the iPad or the Mac. So yeah, if I had to pick one, let's see. Yeah, I've been like that since I was a kid. People pop off the guns. Pretty much. Bradley Smith, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, when will the TV app come to Android? Yeah, I mean, Shrimp Apple Pro said that should be happening any time now. Maybe they're waiting for a March event so that they can announce it when there's some attention given to it. But I think, yeah, I don't know why they haven't done it already, to be honest. Like, when Apple Music came out, it was available for Android pretty quick. I feel like it was right away, or if not right away, it was like a couple months after Apple Music launched. For everybody, it was already on Android. Let's see. What was my leak? Was it true? We had some, I don't know if they were real or not. It basically wasn't true. But back in 2019, there was some people that claimed to work at Apple reached out to me and mentioned that they were working on the new Mac Pro, and theirs was more of a stackable design where you would just kind of put Mac Mini looking pieces together, and if you wanted more storage or more graphics, then it would stack taller, and if you didn't need as much, it would be shorter. But they had an excruciating amount of detail, and I worked with my Discord community on trying to verify if it sounded legit, and they did not give themselves any credit or any name. Like, they literally emailed me, I don't remember what the exact email was, but it was something like Mac Pro Design at Gmail. It was like, I have specifically made this account to let you know because I don't want anything coming back to me. And they didn't even want me to make a video on it originally. When they first started reaching out to me, they were like, please don't, well, he didn't say don't make a video. He just said, I can't remember. I should pull up those emails, but they went into an insane amount of detail on how the design worked. And they weren't like, as soon as I dropped the video later, because I think I did ask him afterwards, I was like, by the way, are you okay if I do kind of a recap after all these things we talked about, and I won't mention where the email came from? And he was like, I guess you can, that's fine. but it sounded believable, but it could have been a troll. I still will never know because obviously the product that he was describing didn't actually come out. But there were other leaks from different companies that like I'm still kind of in contact with some people that work at Apple. More recently, Tesla and Rivian. There's a few employees that I occasionally chat with. But I don't make videos on the information they give me just because I don't want to turn into the leaker channel that's like, here's my exclusive drop, and I don't like the I'm right, they're wrong type mentality with leaks. I prefer it's more fun to just not know what's gonna happen and to speculate. But there's people that have like I've made videos and then they come out and say, actually, you're onto something here, or you're off on this point, and this is right, but this isn't right. Um, I don't know if that's. I don't think it's dishonest. I guess I could see some people trying to say that's dishonest if I make. I guess to me, I would rather make a prediction based off of internal knowledge than claim to have internal knowledge, because that can go both ways, and sometimes sources aren't accurate, or sources will tell you things before they really should, and that can lead you on and to expect certain things and then be wrong. Which I've seen happen in the YouTube community a lot, where they talk to they're not lying, they legitimately have a source, but the source set false expectations in place, and then the YouTuber extrapolated that, and then it ended up disappointing them. So that's why I don't include basically what has been leaked or what I've heard from sources in my videos. I'm just mostly asking and interested for my own personal reasons. Like when I know there's an employee from a certain company or something, I'm like, I'm not going to say what you're going to tell me in videos. Like I'll be quiet if you don't want me to share that information, but I'm out of own curiosity. I just want to know what the truth is. Like, and that kind of helps me set expectations realistically, right? Like if you find out that something isn't going to be as good as you had hoped, you don't want to then hear that information and then go make a video claiming that it's going to be great or this product is going to be fantastic. So kind of by being silent towards certain subjects, you keep expectations more realistic, I guess. But there was a few things like I talked with we're not on the EV channel, so I guess it's not that important. But I was talking with people about the new Model Y colors before they came out, and I was able to kind of see what they looked like, and there was these internal factory pictures and some Cybertruck info here and there, and information on the Tesla Semi before it went public. But again, I was asked to keep it quiet, so I didn't say anything until the announcements were made, and then I was like, okay, now we can talk about it, and that kind of thing. Same thing with Rivian. There's some changes they were making and announcements that hadn't been made yet, and I was like, I just want to know because I'm curious. I'm a fan of all this content too. That's why I make videos, is because it's the kind of stuff I want to see. But if an employee wants to establish a certain level of trust that can I tell you something and trust that you're not going to blow it up and make a big expose video, that's I'll do that. I'll maintain the relationship because I don't want to be branded as a leaker. You know, I don't want to be the guy that people go, do you have any inside knowledge on this? Not really. I can tell you confidently that nothing you guys are very interested in I know much about. It's usually little offshoot pieces of information that are interesting for the real nerdy people like me, but not that interesting to everyone else. Okay, that's for net. David says, is Tailosive Tech Pro worth it? Absolutely not. Don't do it. David Empire super chatted, you should review more cellular plans, i.e. visible. I mean, I would like to, but the problem is, especially with eSIM being a thing now, it's getting rather complicated to switch between carriers. That, like, I'll review my own carrier because I need to use a carrier, obviously, of some kind, but like reviewing carriers is kind of hard because a lot of the time people are just like, how is the coverage? And I'm like, well, that all depends on where you are, and I'm only going to live in one place. You know, I work from home, and I know that Mint Mobile is good where I live, but Like, I'm not that interested in any other carrier I've seen available. I think if Mint Mobile went under, I would definitely try Visible because they seem to be the best provider to go with if you need unlimited data, but I don't. Me, my family, and all of my friends are on Mint Mobile in my personal life because the coverage is great where we live and it's cheaper than Visible, assuming you don't need unlimited data. Most of my friends are actually on the 4 GB like cheapest Mint Mobile plan because they don't use that much data. And I honestly, because I'm home so much, don't really use that much either. I'm on the unlimited plan right now because I have a lot of referral credit, but I'm debating switching it down because I'm not really using all of that much in the first place. I think that Visible is cheap if you need unlimited data, but Mint Mobile is definitely cheaper if you don't need it, which all of my friends and family don't need it. So I'm happy with Mint the way it is, and I could try Visible, and I'm sure it'd be fine. But usually with those things, you kind of have to commit, and then I got to switch eSIMs around, and I mean, I don't know. I don't think I have a desire. Like, watch the Stephen, what's his name? Stephen Dogston. Best cell phone plans. They had me on their podcast, and they were really cool guys, and I still interact with them on Twitter from time to time. There's a channel called the Best Cell Phone Plans, and they basically review everything, and they're a lot more committed to it. They have online active accounts with Verizon, AT&T. They've said U.S. Cellular or Republic Wireless or something is really good. They know everything about all these carriers and all their different options, and I kind of hate all of that. I hate, not that I don't hate them. I hate all the carriers. I hate like all the big guys. I hate how many different options there are. So I just kind of want to find the one I like and stick with them rather than have to switch between all the. I mean, I don't have to, but I would have to sign up for a plan and spend money on things I don't use. Um, Stetson Doggett, yeah, that's it, and Dennis. Those guys are fantastic, and they're going to provide far more expertise, and they're far more knowledgeable on those subjects than I am. So I don't see any need to compete with them. And I'm not, again, I kind of want to follow news and stories that I'm interested in. And I guess I'm just not that interested in it. It's like, if you want the cheapest possible cell phone service, get Mint. And if you need unlimited data, get Visible, I guess. That's that's my answer. I don't really think there's much worth investigating past that. I like the simplicity of the Mint account management too. It's not like, well, if you get 5 people together, then the plans are cheaper, and you got to find people online to partner with, or you get your families. And Mint is just like, here's the price. One person, one phone line. That's it. You have one password. You can sign into the app via Face ID. Their customer support and their app layout is very simple, very easy to understand, which is like the opposite of Verizon and AT&T. They're so complicated that I feel like they intentionally make their account management horrible so that you feel like you have to go to a store so that they can justify having a location where they can try to upsell you on things. You need to have a specialist walk you through what plan you should get. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do all that. Let me just download an app, sign into my account, and boom, I get cell phone service. That's how it should work. Um, hey, Drew, how are you? Are Mint Mobile and T-Mobile speeds identical because they use the same towers? Is all you're missing out on all the little bonuses you never use anyway? They do use the same towers. I believe Mint Mobile is deprioritized, but they did tests. I've done tests, and Ryan Reynolds did a study on this as well when he acquired Mint Mobile, which is that um, you get the deprioritized speeds are very close to the same as prioritized speeds. Basically, he saw like less than 5% variation between Mint Mobile and T-Mobile speeds. I've actually run into more issues with my T-Mobile home internet than I have Mint Mobile. There will be times where my T-Mobile home internet is acting slow and getting bogged down, and then my Mint Mobile internet is fine, even though they're using the same towers, which is weird. So I'm guessing that's at the fault of the little gateway they sent me, which I've been told is not the best hardware. But it's just funny to me that there can be situations where T-Mobile is out or down and my Mint Mobile is still working. It's like, shouldn't this be prioritized? It's not prioritized, I guess, but, and yeah, Visible uses Verizon towers, correct. Mint uses T-Mobile, Visible uses Verizon. So if you're in an area with Verizon that's really good coverage, I'd recommend Visible. If T-Mobile's good, Oh, Burkhart says Visible actually got rid of Party Pay. It's just a flat $30 now for their base plan. Ooh, that's not great. I thought that was like their best feature. David says with US Mobile, you can get 15 gigs for 20 a month on the Verizon network with highest quality priority data. That's pretty good. I've heard good things about US Mobile, but I just don't have a need to buy all these different plans to talk about them. I just know that Mint is still the cheapest. That starts at 15 a month um, for 4 gigs, but US Mobile's, I guess, a better value, but I don't know how much better the customer service or account management is. Um, T-Mobile internet is deprioritized further. Isn't that funny? The paying customer is delayed past the MVNO. um, let's see. I guess for MVNOs like Mint, look at who the underlining carrier, T-Mobile, Verizon is, and judge your coverage based on that. Pretty much, yeah. Skylar says, how are these people able to get in touch with you privately? Well, that people just DM me on Twitter or on Discord or something. Or they email me. Let's see. Visible is the best value. How's the experience of FaceTime call on TV via AirPlay? Do you think Continuity Cam for tvOS is a good idea? Ooh. I actually haven't FaceTimed much recently. Continuity camera for the TV. Huh. I guess you could do that. Because you could do like center stage, like you could prop up the phone and then the center stage camera kind of moves around based on who's in the living room. That's not a horrible idea. I guess you're pretty close to just airplaying. You just airplay your FaceTime call to the TV in landscape mode. I've done that before, just not recently. I don't check Instagram DMs all that much, no. Um, Can you take the SIM card out of the T-Mobile tower and put it in an old iPhone or something and tether off of that? I haven't tried that, but probably. I'm not sure if that'll work, though. US Mobile is 15 a month for 5 gigs. Well, that's pretty good. But how's the referral program? Because I don't know. I'm happy with what I am with where I am. And to get 1 extra gig per month, but to have to order a whole new plan, and again, referrals are something to factor in. I don't consider that a bias, because if someone is using a referral program to their advantage, it's because that means they want to continue using that service. And I don't know. I haven't had great experience with Verizon where I live, I guess. Do you expect any new Apple Display product coming other than Studio Display and Pro Display XDR? Well, that's 2. Ross Young has talked about there being an updated version of the Pro Display that would have mini LED and ProMotion, but it keeps getting pushed back over and over again. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that they refresh the Pro Display this year. That would be great. But other than those 2, probably not. I don't see a situation where there's 3 or 4 or something. I think that's pretty much as they'll do, is the Pro version and a low version. Let's see. You can still get $25 on Visible with the PayPal discount. I don't know what the PayPal is. It sounds like you guys know a lot more about it than I do, so I'm definitely not going to make videos on it. It's just, I could research it and do a breakdown and stuff, but I just know it's not going to be as good as Stetson Doggett's and the best cell phone plans got. They're the experts, and they're interested in that thing, and I'm not interested in that thing. So Zach Jewett says, hey, I work for Verizon, and I will have you know stores will never help you. What a great representative. He says, the amount of times I want to recommend Mint or Visible to customers is insane. I work for Verizon, and I use Mint. I hope that says something. Wow. That's an incredible recommendation. The Verizon employees are using Mint Mobile. That's wonderful. The year is 2040. Your iPhone has DSLR quality, 3-day battery, 6G speeds, all screen. Your Mac exports 8K videos in 5 seconds. Could you ever see yourself buying anything again if that was the case? Batteries still degrade, so maybe you just replace the batteries, but 2040. No, I think we're kind of headed there now. I'm kind of in that boat as we speak. I'm happy with my iPhone, although my mom is not happy with her phone and she wants to upgrade, but she doesn't want to buy a new iPhone and she doesn't want to buy a secondhand iPhone. She specifically wants to buy my iPhone because my mom is, very sweet and very nice. So she's like, hey, let me know when you're ready to sell your current phone. I'm like, well, Mom, you can just buy these secondhand. She's like, no, I want yours. So if anything, Mom is like encouraging me to upgrade, but I don't want to. So I'm content and happy with my current 13 Pro Max. I love my MacBook Pro. It's very capable and very fast, and I don't think even if exports were cut in half, I could justify buying another MacBook Pro because the exports are so fast already. Like every time there's another like speed improvement in export times, it's a smaller and smaller amount of time total saved. So right now, if it takes me 5 minutes to export a 10-minute video, okay, maybe they come up with the 3nm M2 Max chip and it's really fast. I could upgrade to that new MacBook Pro and it cuts my export time in half. Okay, that means I save 2.5 minutes per video. I mean, time is money, but not that much. Like, whether or not the video's done being uploaded and posted in a difference of 2.5 minutes, that's not going to save me like thousands of dollars. Whereas like the iMac Pro I used for years, and as we were planning more and more trips, I was realizing like I need a laptop. I don't care how good the M1 Pro or M1 Max chip is. I just need a laptop. Even if the chips were slower than my iMac Pro, I was going to buy one because with all of the not vacations, but traveling we were planning on doing and wanting to work on those trips, I was like, yeah, I'm going to need a mobile workstation. And it was great how much faster it was than the iMac Pro, but I was just in need of the form factor. So now that I went all in and bought like basically a maxed out MacBook Pro, I'm very content with the way it is. I feel the same way about my Apple Watch. The battery life still lasts over 2 days on a charge for me. So I could get a lot more battery degradation on this thing and still be content with it. I love the display. For what I need a watch for, it covers the basics. It's no Ultra, but I prefer the thin bezels. I love the design. It's very slick. It's very clean. I'm even pretty content with my AirPods. I don't use them all that much anymore, but when I occasionally do use them, they're fine. AirPods Pro 2 are way better, but I'm not using I'm not using AirPods enough on a regular basis to justify upgrading. So yeah, like you say in 2040, will there be a point in upgrading all that much? I'm like, I kind of feel that way now. I don't feel like I need to upgrade, but it doesn't take away my interest. I still like checking out new hardware and talking about new hardware and what's worth it, but I definitely think that the spaces Apple is in is matured, and that's why I have a big list of video ideas for my EV channel right now. A bunch of videos that I want to talk, a bunch of topics that I want to dive into, and I'm like, oh yeah, what do I make first? Do I want to make this video next, or this video next, or what do I want to make for EV? Because I feel like that's a more innovative space. There's a lot of change going on, and there's a lot of startup companies and new players on the block, and we're very early in the adoption curve of electric vehicles. So that's why I'm spending a lot of time and focus on that. Whereas in the tech community, everyone who wants a phone basically has one, and the story is the same whether you're interested in foldables, whether you're interested in Android phones, whether you're interested in iPhones, watches, headphones. Everything is just refinement. Everything is just incremental upgrades. Everything is just a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit higher quality. And that's why I do the skits. That's why I love doing skits, is because if I didn't have the skits in these videos, they would be so boring to me. The EV market to me is interesting in itself. It doesn't need skits. Like I don't feel like I need to do comedy for that because there's so much to talk about, and there's so much context to provide, and there's so many intricate details that I have to try to get right when talking about EVs that I'm like, oh, we don't have time to mess around with skits on those videos. But the tech stuff, it's like, if I wasn't doing skits, I don't think I could do these videos, honestly. Like, I feel like the skits are what's keeping me going with this stuff. Foldables have gotten really good, but they're stuck in the same thing as refinement. They're still just this fold is a little bit better than the last year's fold. You get to boast about it being innovative for 1 year. Okay, wow, it folds in half. Okay, what about next year's? It folds in half, but the camera's a little better. Okay, What can you do next? Okay, it folds in half and the processor's a little faster. It's like, oh, you're stuck in the same thing as regular phones. You get that innovative card for 1 or 2 years, but now we've had foldables for 4 years. It's 2023 and they've been around since 2019, and they're stuck in the same boat as regular phones of refinement, ironing out things. Like my last video about the iPhone 15 Plus and all that, if there was no skit with that, the video would just be like, make it cheaper, make it smaller. Bye. Thanks for watching. You know, there's not, in my opinion, there's not that much like exciting developments going on with Apple, Google, Samsung hardware. It's all just kind of slightly better this, a little bit better that. So that's why I'm not really in the market. I don't really know what I plan on upgrading this year. Maybe an external monitor, but that depends heavily on how they price it. And I know that the tech community is interested in little details like that, but it's just not worth buying whole new hardwares for me. I'm happy you like your phone, David. I'm just saying the foldable content does not bring in as many views as regular phone content. That's why Z Fold videos get less views than iPhone videos. The tech community loves foldables because you're obsessed with the tech for it being tech. It doesn't matter if it's useful or practical. It's just technology that's doing something different. But I've messed around with foldables and I got bored with them very quickly. Let's see. I stopped at a Verizon store. The store employee tried to upsell us on 5G. Her excitement level clearly showed that upsell is the policy. Yeah, that's funny. Let's see. Thought about getting the fastest MacBook Air, but guess I'm probably better off getting a refurbished M1 MacBook Pro, especially since I would like to start learning Final Cut, and I do like the touch bar. Yeah, Randy, that's probably going to be the most cost-effective way to do it if you love the touch bar. But I would encourage you to try to move on from the touch bar if you can, because its time is limited. Like, it's just getting to the point where arguments will be on transfer speed for quality nobody will notice. Yes, but can you export 16K at 360 FPS? Yeah, exactly, Jackson. That's. I feel like we're basically there already. It's like, how much? What are the use cases of needing more performance than what we're getting? They're getting progressively more niche to me. Let's see. I don't need a phone to fold back and forth. I need a long-lasting battery with a great screen and powerful functionality. Exactly. That's why even Apple's worst-selling phones are outselling foldables. Like the 13 mini outsold every foldable, and Apple wasn't happy with the sales of the 13 mini. Let's see. Making a phone fold has absolutely nothing to do with how well it works. Folding your phone does not make it work better. I agree. Arguably, it makes it worse in many ways. You should make an honest review of Tailosive Tech Pro. I just did. I said don't buy it. It's not worth it. You can watch my videos for free. You'd be better off using that money on Apple TV Plus. There's way more content to watch. You can just get YouTube Premium and watch my videos without ads. Like, just don't do it. That's what I'm telling you. Alpha says he'll continue to scream until the touch bar makes a return. That sounds like a good tab. Let's see. Electric vehicles are going nowhere. Those big batteries are going to be an environmental nightmare. Uh-oh. Sounds like someone doesn't know what they're talking about. From High Roller, the new breakthrough in fusion will put everything out of business in 15 years. Is this fusion in the room with you right now? No, it doesn't matter that EV production is growing by over 50% a year. It doesn't matter that all major automotive companies are switching their lineups to electric. It doesn't matter that we can recycle the battery packs in these vehicles and get 95% of the raw materials out of them to make new battery packs, or you can convert old battery packs into energy storage to help stabilize the grid as energy needs go up. No, that's all going nowhere. Eventual fusion. That's the future, which, of course, has been 5 years away for the past 40 years. Moon River says, I think you passed your internet troubles to me. Uh-oh. Maybe it was contagious. Should have wore a mask. Let's see. But if you're calling because your phone doesn't work, why would I ask you pay $90 for a more expensive plan? That's funny. Oh, he says, going to a Verizon store, they only want sales and they will not help you with anything anymore. I work for customer support. If you call me, we will try Verizon, still try to tell us to sell a higher plan. It's ridiculous. I feel like, doesn't Verizon own Visible too? Like, they've got to be aware that they're losing a lot of people. I guess maybe not enough. I know some people that just use Verizon and AT&T and they literally just don't care what it costs. They don't think about it. They're just like, yeah, that's what I'm on. That's what I use. And it's like you realize what service you're getting and how much cheaper it would be if you just went through another. You could literally save like hundreds of dollars a year. So they're like, yeah, I just don't want to fuss around with that. Do we need? I just don't want to go sit at a store and have to cancel because they know Verizon and AT&T are going to jump down your throat anytime you try to get off of them. They're going to be like, what? They don't want to deal with the Sims or any of that. It's going to be too complicated. So people are just like, hey, basically that's what I think carriers, and even Apple's guilty of this. This is what the subscription service war is all about. It's about annoying people out of their money. Like I had a conversation with the same friend about how he signed up for iCloud and he's now paying for iCloud and he's like, yeah, it's only $3. It's only whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's a very low price if you just look at the monthly fee. But once you realize that it's not unlimited and you're going to fill that up eventually, especially if you're taking high quality pictures and videos, at some point you're going to hit it. You're going to hit a limit and Apple's going to tell you to pay for a higher tier plan and then you're going to be paying more a month, or you're going to have to go through your stuff and start downloading certain things for offline or deleting duplicates. And you could either wait until you've spent hundreds of dollars on iCloud and then go through all your stuff, or you can go through all your stuff now and not pay the hundreds of dollars. So I just decided those are the two options. Either way, at some point in your life, you're going to have to sort through all those pictures and find a way to store stuff for cheap. Might as well do it now and not pay the hundreds of bucks. That's how I figured it. You're kind of like paying for iCloud storage is like, to me, delaying the inevitable, and you're paying extra to delay that chore. It's because unless it's unlimited, if at some point they say iCloud now has unlimited backup, then okay, you're not delaying the inevitable. You just found a way to pay a monthly fee to store everything. But as photos and cameras get higher and higher quality, there will come a point where you will fill up the 2 terabytes, or if you pay for Apple One, it'll eventually be the 4 terabytes, or Apple will come up with another tier and just continue to raise prices. It appears that YouTube only allows me to gift Pro, not Plus. Oh, that's weird. I wonder why they do that. Don't do it, Michael. Don't gift people Tailosive Tech Pro. It's not worth it. And I'd have to update the outro credits, which I don't feel like doing. Verizon owns Visible, but they make it a point that they do not want us to recommend them. It makes no sense because if we don't, then the customer goes to T-Mobile for cheaper and lose the customer. Yeah, I think Zach should be in charge of Verizon, to be honest. Let's see. My biggest advice to customers is to just do research. Don't sign up for a carrier because your neighbor had them. I know a lot of people that just use a carrier because they grew up on that carrier. Like their family had Verizon growing up and they were on their family plan for a long time. And they're like, oh, I guess I need my own plan. Might as well just do it through Verizon. Don't do that. Please don't do that. T-Mobile has been eating into Verizon's customer base for at least a couple of years now. Oh yeah, I'm sure. But I'm not even that in love with T-Mobile, to be honest. I would not prefer using T-Mobile over Mint. I feel like what's a red flag, in my opinion, are services that include a bunch of extra perks. Like if you feel like Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile, like they're trying to win you over with, hey, we'll throw in Apple TV Plus. Hey, we'll throw in Paramount Plus, and we'll throw in discounts on your upgrade. That's because they're hoping to lose money on those services and those hardware, on those sales in the short run, because they know they're going to get it back through the membership. So you'll justify, $60 a month, $70 a month. Well, when you factor in that I'm getting Paramount and I'm getting Apple TV, or I get Apple Music with this carrier, that's how they get you, because you're convinced that, well, if I had to pay for all those things separately, it would cost more. But it's like, would you actually be using those things, though? That's what you're not sure. You're like, well, I use it now because it's included. But it's like, try to just not use those things and then find the cheap carrier plan that's not trying to throw in all of these promos and stuff. And that's in a lot of ways what Apple's doing. Apple's throwing in the buy the AirPods, get 6 months free of Apple Music, buy the iPhone, get this free. And I'm like, they know they're going to get their money back. They're not losing money on you. I guarantee you that. But I would just say if you don't stay for the hardware sales, because you can make your own sales by buying secondhand, buying certified refurbished, and finding discounts elsewhere and that kind of thing. Carrier stores and car dealers are the worst in brainwashing you. I've never had to go through a car dealer, thank God. Tim Cook voice is the best. Let's see. I switched from Verizon to Sprint, then they got bought by T-Mobile like a year later. Now I'm on T-Mobile. There you are. Did you actually fully switch over from Sprint? I thought they merged. Or does that now count as a buyout? Apple One Unlimited included exclusively on Magenta Max. That's the world we're heading towards. It's going to be a software services galore. And that's what I'm just telling everyone. Resist, push back, fight against the death by 1,000 cuts with all these memberships and get as low as you possibly can with the prices. All three carriers are pretty good in most areas, some better than others better in others than the others. I would not ditch Fios unless it's just wasting your money. If I got Verizon Fios in my area, I would try it, but they don't have it here. My bill is a bit cheaper, and I have quite a few benefits that I didn't have before. However, it's worth noting that my parents pay for this. If I were paying for myself, I'd go to Visible. Yeah. See, that's also a very common situation. My friends that I'm about to see, actually. That's why I got to wrap up. They're coming over. Last time I talked to them, I was like, so who's your cell phone provider? And they're like, well, I'm on my parents' plan. And I'm like, hey, I'm not docking that. Some people are like, oh my God, you're using your parents' cell phone plan? It's like, hey, would I like to just have free cell phone service or substantially cheaper cell phone service? Or would I like to pay an extra $50 a month just so I can say I'm independent? It's like, who cares? I bet a bunch of you here are still on your parents' health insurance plans too. Nothing wrong with that. As long as you can do it and they're comfortable paying for it, you'll save a lot of money. And, if your parents are up for that, then God bless them. But if they're not, no worries. You got to take responsibility for yourself at a certain point. You complain about inflation in Argentina. It was 100% in a year. Well, I'm not saying it's worse here than elsewhere. I'm just saying it might be part of the reason prices go up. After listening to Drew, I think I'm going to have to give Mint and Visible a try and see which one carries more weight on the balance scale. Interesting. Okay, we're convincing some people. This should be cool. But most people I've talked to, I know a lot, and I've talked to a lot of people that have switched from the big carriers, Verizon, AT&T, or they switched to Mint, or they switched to Visible. And I hardly ever, I can't think of a single time in my life where we got to the point where they were like, oh, the coverage, the deprioritized speeds, they're so much worse. I'm just going to have to go back to Verizon now. Like, I can't think of a time that happened. I'm legitimately trying. And it's like, most of the time, the coverage for all the carriers for most of the country is pretty much the same. You get some areas that are a little worse than others, but they're all pretty much offering that there's the same exact service, in my opinion. And you just find the cheapest one you can. I don't doubt that U.S. cellular is a very good choice. But I just, you got to convince me to switch. And if I'm not saving money, then I'm very unmotivated to switch. Zach says, you're right, Drew. People call in all the time saying, I've been a Verizon customer for 30 years, which is great, I guess, but you are still paying $100 for your plan. Oh, no. Oh, can you imagine how much money they've sent after that amount of time? Let's see. Other than dropped calls, Drew, I've not heard of that personally. I've never had dropped calls myself. If you have it, then I guess you can cancel, and you can even get a refund, I believe. If you have issues within the first few weeks, they can cancel and get your money back. If you are getting bad service from your provider, Mint and Visible do offer trials before you sign up. Please use them before, like Drew said, service is different. Yeah, exactly. There you go. But I've never had a dropped call, and I've been on the phone for hours with Mint before. But that's just myself. My parents, my sister, They're all on Mint. My wife is on Mint. My cousins are on Mint. My in-laws are on Mint. None of them have ever reported call dropping personally. Um, I'm not making this up. I complain about Apple all the time, and I send them all their money. I have very little reason to not. I have very little reason to make stuff up on this. Um, you can get unlimited, but the only reason I have it is because I get 50% off by being a uni student. Do what you got to do. That's all I'm saying. Just get whatever carrier you can that results in you paying the least amount of money. If that is uh, your parents paying for it, then great. That's fine. Matt says my parents are on my plan. That's funny. And Joshua says my husband is still on his aunt's plan. Why do you roll your eyes at that, Josh? What's wrong with that? You got to aunt wants to pay for it. Cool. If my aunt was like, hey, I'm gonna buy you an iPhone 14 Pro because we're family and I like you, would I say no? Maybe I would try to return the favor and offer something in return. Maybe that's the way I would combat it. If someone was like, I'm gonna pay for your cell phone service, I'll be like, okay, I'll pay for your YouTube Premium or something. We kind of help each other out. But if they want to pay for it, what's wrong with that? Don't fault them for it. Um, Oh my gosh, it's already 12:50. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, but I got to get going. I appreciate the super chats and the memberships. You guys are incredibly generous. I hope you're excited for the new year. I hope you have a happy new year and that 2023 can be a good one, free of pandemics, inflation, and war. And there's going to be bad things, I know, but we've had a rough past couple of years. Hopefully 2023 can only be up from here, right? Right? Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Bye-bye.